began earlier to discuss spiritual psychology and explain the concepts, you made a statement that I found extremely interesting, and I'd like maybe you could expand on it a little bit. And that is the idea that instead of being humans striving for spirituality, we're actually spiritual beings in a human experience. So if you would.
Sure. If one lives one's life centered on the goal line, if this is the sum of what one knows and what one's existence is, and one doesn't really have any idea about this context of the learning line, then the best that one will come to is that they see themselves as a human being always struggling to get ahead, and maybe every now and then they'll catch a glimpse of something more, but that's what it will remain, glimpse of something more. As one starts to wake up, and it's not a mistake that this is referred to as awakening. It's not a mistake that they refer to this as awakening. It's literally what happens for people. It's like they all of a sudden they go, whoa, this is a different thing. And they start to move up. Let's say that you would get up to here. And we have historical references of people who have gotten to that level, or maybe they came in that way to teach. But we're talking about people like Jesus the Christ. We're talking about people like the Buddha. And they're not the only ones. History is if you study this, there are many people who exemplify that. Ramana Maharshi in the Indian tradition. As they get higher and higher and higher, and they get up to that high level, all that one sees from this level is that everything is loving, and everything is spirituality, and everything is beautiful. And there is nothing else going on. It's just how it all plays together and how we all interpret that which is going on. The higher we go, the more we become aware of ourselves as divine beings or spiritual beings having human experience. The other thing that is very interesting as we go up, and this is something we deal with at USM all the time, because as people have the experience of moving up, they find, now don't get scared everybody, they find that what used to motivate them towards success on the goal line no longer does. They lose that drive for success in physical world reality. So people say, I can't work the way I used to. I don't have that drive anymore. What do I use? Someone put it this year, what do I use for mojo? But that was, and the answer to that question, I think, is best exemplified by the story of Julia Butterfly Hill, who was this, I think she was about in her early 20s at the time. She climbed up this giant sequoia in the redwood forest because the logging companies were going to cut down the trees. And she said, I'm not moving until we find a way that we don't cut down these incredible trees. And I guess the logging company figured they would just wait her out. Well, about 2.5 years later, I kid you not, about 2.5 years later, finally the logging companies caved, and they made a deal whereby they kept a 30-acre grove intact in order to get her to come down the tree. And so, of course, there are all these cameras and interviewers and whatnot, and the media being what it is. How courageous of you, Ms. Hill. How wonderful that you would choose to fight the logging companies. And, you know, and she said, She said, oh no. She said, I'm not against the logging companies. I have no quarrel with the logging companies. I didn't climb the tree because I'm at odds with the logging companies. I climbed the tree because I love the trees. So we start to learn that the only reason that we gravitate toward to do anything on the goal line is because we're motivated out of our loving nature to share the gifts and the attributes that we have been given in the world to make what we at USM call a meaningful contribution.